Welcome to the Stoned Heen View, a podcast series which interviews a range of sport club representatives and leading professional sport club personnel. We find out what these people are doing during the current health crisis with some of the most popular winter sports seasons postponed. I'm Mark Heenan, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Mark Stone. Now, Stoney, this is a really important guest today, someone that is an AFL Life member, but has done a hell of a lot for women's football and is a real pioneer of the game. And we haven't really looked at, in our episode so far, the impact of women's footy, and someone that's worked as an administrator and had a number of roles in the games. How important today is the guest, and also how good is it to speak to this person?
You made a really important point there, Mark. You talked about the pioneering of anything in life. I was going to read a couple of stats out to you for our guest. Also, 302 games of football, 6 times All-Australian, 16 state times representative of Victoria, and 6 times captain of a state. Now, you can't get any better than that. So this person, who and I go back a long way. I'm looking forward to our guest this afternoon, Marco.
Absolutely, Mark Stone. And her playing career started with the East Brunswick Scorpions, but also our next guest has been an influential figure in women's football as a player, a coach and administrator. So to think of it, since 1990, she's been an integral part of women's football. She, as you said, 300 games in the Victorian Women's Football League, and then founded the club Sunshine YCW Spurs, now known as the VU Western Spurs. While still playing, she became the president of the VFLW from 2004 to 2012 and had a stint working as the Western Bulldogs community manager between 2005 and 2008. As mentioned, 6-time VWFL competition best and fairest, 7-time club best and fairest winner, and also won 3 premierships as a player. But it's really some of her roles since then. You know, with the Melbourne Football Club, she actually started in a community manager role there, ended up becoming the Demons AFL operations manager in 2017 when the AFLW kicked off. Then in late 2017, she went to the Western Bulldogs, stayed in that role since. In February 2020, early this year, she was awarded the AFL Life membership, only the 3rd female to do so. We welcome to the Stoned Heen View, Western Bulldogs General Manager of Women's Football, Debbie Lee. Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to have you there. And it's been an interesting day today because the AFL's made an announcement on where they're going to play the grand final, and Queensland's one of those locations. We'll talk to you about that a little bit later. I want to have a chat to you, obviously, with regards to your role at the moment in working with the Western Bulldogs. And we came to know, I got in contact with you a few years ago when you were at Melbourne, and I was doing a couple of magazine features on a couple of AFLW prospects and players from the Geelong region, and it was great to get your insight into those players. But I want to talk to you about the AFLW draft. It's happening in October. What are some of the challenges you're faced around COVID in your working role? What are some of those hurdles in the lead up to the AFLW draft?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time for everyone in the industry. Clearly, I'm actually working one day at the moment, even though it's, probably 2 or 3 days. But yeah, we've had a really busy sign and trade period as well, prior to obviously going into the draft, which will be the 6th of October. And that was a really challenging time just because we had to adjust our way we approached it. So in terms of signing contracts with players, the way we dealt with our managers, the interviews we had with our players, and currently at the moment we're actually interviewing draftees and their family. Last night, I'll do it tonight and this week. And that's potential draftee, mum and dad, give us an opportunity to tell us about the Bulldogs. But yeah, it's all over Zoom. So it's the new world, isn't it? They're moving into the draft. I mean, unfortunately for the young women that are going to be drafted, it will be a virtual draft. So, they're not going to have that opportunity where they're all in the room together and they get up there and, pick one gets called out and they get their AFL jumper for the first time. I guess, given under the current circumstances, hoping that we can actually start the competition.
Deb, with the amount of players that are in the pool, how many players in the pool are there, and how many selections do the Bulldogs have?
Yeah, so the rules state that you could retain 27 players as a maximum. Some clubs, such as Melbourne, chose to delist more than those or trade more than that particular number. We ended up with 27, and we negotiated a pretty strong hand in the draft. In the Victorian draft, I know it's a national draft, but Victorian picks, we have 2, 6 and 10. So 3 in the top 10, which is really important for us. We're trying to build a sustainable team. We've got a young team, and we'll go into next season with 14 girls out of a total list of 30 that will be under 21, which will be absolutely the youngest team in the league.
Deb, when we go back to the inaugural season of the AFLW, it was always a great sort of understanding of how far the game had come. And incidentally, I was actually in Queensland when the AFLW grand final was played, and I believe Brisbane and Adelaide were in the combatants in that grand final. And it was an amazing day just to actually be there and the spectacle. I think they had free entry for people coming into the game and all that, but there was a real good feeling about what was about to unfold, that you were going to be part of history. And then I think you would have seen it the year after when the Western Bulldogs won the grand final, and you would have been part of that as well. So what are your sort of feelings about how far AFLW has come in the last 2 or 3 years since the inaugural season? We've seen this year that there was no premiership being played, or there was no grand final. How do you see the future going forward for AFLW?
Yeah, obviously, you talked before around when I started playing footy in the early 90s. So we're talking a journey for me and a lens on women's football that's been quite substantial. So you've gone from community footy in Victoria 6 teams to now a national competition, which is excellent. And I think along the way, we've seen the athletes develop because of the investment, the education and the resources that have been invested in them. So the game's taken another step, and it's really given the spectators and those that love sport a real good spectacle. And I think what we see with women's footy, it's a different kind of game to the men's game, and it needs to be, because we're different. We're women and we play it differently. Yes, there's elements of the game that are the same, but we're not built the same. We're not as we can't kick as long, or majority of players can't kick as long, and it's a different speed as well. But it suits the female athletes. And I guess the milestone for me was the first ever game of AFLW, which was held at Optus Oval. Well, I call it Optus Oval. I'm showing my age there, but Carlton Princess Park. I guess for me, the biggest thing is once that game was played, for me, no one could take it back. So it meant we landed. So it didn't matter who said what, or who would decide whether we'd go forward or not. There was the turn up of the crowd, so the community showed that they had interest, and we weren't turning back. And then you fast forward to the national competition. It's just been phenomenal, the growth and the way the players have developed, the way the clubs have developed as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it was just a landmark vision of Gil McLachlan, the AFL CEO, turning back people trying to get into the ground because it was a full house. It was an historic moment for AFLW.
Yeah, who would have thought, really? Who would have thought that would happen? And, that particular game, we'd worked, it really started, the journey really started to showcase the game to AFL itself was back in 2013 with the exhibition series. So people say, oh, geez, AFL, has taken off. But really it happened, 2013, and then the competition got up at 2017, and it happened with the exhibition series between Melbourne and Bulldogs. So it's been a bit of a long haul, but now we've landed, and I think we're here to stay.
Deb, how much is the game or the participation rate for elite sport or elite women that want to play at the higher level? Is there more and more interest every year about the skill set or the amount of players who want to play at that level, want to try and get drafted? Is that just going gangbusters as far as women in the game go?
Yeah, absolutely. You even have to look at the nominations for the draft. So nominations are open at the moment, and last year we had around 600-700 players nominated, if not more, whereas in the first year, if we go back to 2013, you're probably looking at 200, if that. And just the NAB League competition, the way that pathway has been created, even us being more sophisticated, where we're having interviews similar to the men's, that we're having a combine now. So there's all these different opportunities for players, and the awareness. So you've got that. Often when we talk to the players, and what we've done recently, we're finding out that they are elite at sport. So majority of them have played basketball, netball, cricket, and then they've had a bit of a go at footy, and they fell in love with the game. And most of them have come late to the game as well. There's very few players that are getting drafted that have played since 5. Most of them maybe 12, and then you might look at 14 or 16 where they actually start competitive footy. But yeah, the numbers show also around the country in terms of participation rates have gone through the roof, and that's been elevated by the competition as well.
Debbie, a few years ago, I was lucky enough to meet Sue Alberti. She was doing a book launch in Ocean Grove. One of the ladies who actually wrote the book, I know really well, and she wrote the book The Footy Lady. And obviously the work that you've done through the Western Bulldogs, she's been on the board at the Western Bulldogs as in Sue Alberti, I think even being vice president previously as well. She's had a pretty big influence on how the women's football has been shaped over a period of time, even back to when she was playing or when she tried to play, and she's had, a lot of life experiences as well. Can you talk to me about some of the conversations or some of the influences that have shaped your career in women's football, one of which may have been her, but also from a playing point of view? How remarkable is she as a person, and also who are some of the other key figures in women's football that have helped you go along with the journey that you've had?
Well, Sue, as we all know, has made a huge contribution to the game. I met Sue back in, it was early 2000 when I was president of the Victorian Women's Football League. We were down at the Preston Oval and we were having a Vic Country versus Vic Metro match, and I invited Sue along. And at this point, it was a volunteer committee, and she offered up on the day a cheque of $25,000, which really ignited the opportunity for the Women's League to actually put in a part-time football operations manager, and really enabled us to excel and resource and progress the sport. So I've known Sue for a long time. I'm at the Bulldogs as well, and she has been great support and driver. And I guess other people that have helped me, obviously my family and my friends and the Spurs and the network there, but off field, it hasn't all been great. Like, it hasn't all been, fun. I'll go back to early 90s, go back to 2000, and I'm walking in saying, hey, let's start women's football. And I remember walking into the AFL. I thought I was speaking a different language. And it's just so ironic now how different the approach is, which is a good thing. But it was hard. Like, people didn't take you for granted. People thought you wanted to play footy because you want to be better than the blokes, and it was just disheartening. And it was so disheartening for, a good 5 to 10 years to try to advocate and get someone to actually buy into what we were trying to do. And I guess people, that allowed and have really supported and helped progress it is people like Karen Hayes, who was the director of board member at Melbourne Footy Club, Jen Watt, who was my direct report, reported to, I should say, at Melbourne. And she really supported when I arrived at Melbourne to really get this exhibition series happening. There's numerous. And then I get to the Bulldogs, there's a whole range of people, Chris Grant, Amit Baines, Peter Gordon, the list goes on. And then there's the older generation, like the Lisa Hardemans, who was the president when I was first starting in women's football, Julie Allen, Lisa Caddo. There's these magnificent women who no one would know of, who really are the foundation of where the game is today.
Deb, first cross pass with you in 1998 when you were at the Spurs, and I remember you were playing up at St Albans there that day, and now you're an AFL life member and a pioneer. Does it sit well with you to be a pioneer of a game that now that half the population in Australia plays? Pretty big mantle to carry, Deb.
Yeah, I guess, Stoney, you don't, you sort of don't. I haven't really sat back and gone, oh, well, I guess I'm still in the throw of things, I'm still in footy, I'm still trying to, reshape things and advocate. So you sort of haven't stopped, maybe when I stopped, but it's certainly humbling, absolutely. And I did it because I was passionate about it, and footy gave me what I gave it, built me to the person I am today. Many great mates, learn a lot. But it's, I guess the life membership for me was great that I received it, but I felt like it was also a platform where women's football was actually acknowledged as well in some way, because it's the first time that someone in women's football also had been recognised for this award. So hopefully in some way it also, represents all the work that everyone else has done. I mean, it hasn't just been me who's been able to drive women's footy. It's all the women I mentioned before. I'm just the lucky one who's been recognised. But certainly, it's absolutely an honour. I mean, only 3 women have been honoured. So it was very pleasing and surprising.
And it's important to mention those 2 other women that have had the part in the game like you've had, and the influence and their contribution needs to get acknowledged as well. Sam Moyston, Jill Lindsay, and you're the 3rd person. So just tell me about juggling motherhood and being, when you were at Melbourne as well, being an operations manager. So you got the call to go back to the Bulldogs, or you obviously had good relationships with the Bulldogs. Was that an easy decision to go back to the Western Bulldogs in 2017 and head up sort of their AFLW campaign in that sense, in your, general manager role? And how did you find that with family? How was it juggling motherhood and doing the role that you do at the Bulldogs and sort of leaving Melbourne? Was that an easy decision?
Well, it terms of motherhood, it was interesting. When I was at Melbourne, I worked in the footy department and I was the only woman. So I amongst all the AFL coaches, and I was just, footy ops for the women's team. So, and then I was pregnant. So, it was these guys were like, oh, geez, what's going on here, And there was a woman sitting in the office right amongst it. Some of them were a little bit confused how I actually got pregnant too. It was quite interesting. Given that I'm, obviously in a same-sex relationship. So I think that also floored a few of them. I guess after, I was pregnant with Mac. Obviously I've got 2 kids. I've got Mac who's 4 now and Stevie who's 2. Things change. And the Bulldogs approached me, and obviously there was a connection in with the Spurs, and there always was. I'm on the West. I've worked at the Bulldogs before and did a lot of work in the community prior to leaving. And things just aligned in terms of, where my life was. It was very hard to leave the Melbourne girls. I had a great relationship with Daisy Pearce and Elise O'Day, and the list goes on. I think just things aligned. It was the time. And then I had to think about family, I didn't have to go to Casey, which was 40 k's from Melbourne. As I said, I was on this side of town. I was still involved in the Spurs. So it just all sort of fitted in quite well. So it was good when I got there. We've got plenty of work to do still at the Bulldogs. But, it's a great place to work.
Have you always been a Western Bulldogs person in that sense?
I'm up in Pascoe, so I've been at Bombers.
You're a Bomber.
Clearly, when you
good
work at
girl. Good girl.
Yeah. I'm a Bomber girl. And I used to go to the games at Windy Hill with my dad and all that sort of stuff, and my brothers. Yeah, I guess West is where I've, been a 19-year-old at Sunshine CW, spent a lot of time there out at Sunshine, obviously, and with that community, and then in the community role as community manager for Bulldogs prior to moving across to Melbourne. So yeah, it's a great area. I really enjoy it. The move was hard, but at the end of the day, it was the right decision for everyone.
If anybody knows Debbie Lee, they know she does things 100 miles an hour and she doesn't want to take any shortcuts. Deb, you're a 5-time Helen Lambert Medallist of the Brownlow equivalent, 5 times, and would you still get a kick today?
Funny, Stoney. Funny you say this. About a couple of days ago, the Spurs reached out and said, hey, we're going to put a Masters team in. Are you interested, Debo? The game's different now, isn't it? But I reckon I might get a kick in Masters. So I said to my friends, a group of friends, I said, yeah, let's have a go at this. So I might pull the boots on, depending what happens with the health of the state this, when the next year. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, look, the game's very different now, isn't it, to when I was playing. I was one of those players who was in and under and quite physical for a female. Not to say they're not today, but it's quicker, faster, more athletic, better skills. But yeah, footy clubs, it's a great environment to grow up in, isn't it?
Hey, Deb, what do you reckon? Do you think we could get, this show's a bit about banter and the person as well, but could we get a little like a reality lifestyle series on that, like the Hammerheads back in the day, or, the club, or what do you reckon? Maybe they could do the re-engagement with Debbie Lee, the champion of local footy and state footy, and also the AFLW. Could there be like a documentary on it, maybe?
Oh, look, I think I'd have to test myself out first. I don't embarrass myself on the field, but I bet there'd be some funny stories that would come out of it. I'm sure of it. Yeah, who knows? I guess I don't miss the game because I'm still in it. Geez, you miss the physicality of the game and playing the game and what happens in it with your teammates and what happens after the game. So, and that really social connection too. I think that's important as well. And footy clubs are great for that.
Mark mentioned before, Deb, about 2002, the Hammerheads, and it was a really defining moment in women's sport. I mean, you challenged the position to be able to play in that competition, and you got knocked back. But it was really a defining moment, I think, in career and the turning point for women's footy, I thought, at that point.
Yeah, Stoney, was a really interesting time, how the female footy community dealt with that. And particularly I was an executive member. And I think what people felt was that it was a bit of a show for Debbie Lee. I think people didn't understand my motivation to be involved in the show. And the VWFL and women can play footy and just, yes, it's me, but, beyond me, it's about footy. So it was an interesting time. And it was a pretty tough time, that show, because, I was a lot younger then. And I remember you'd go on Thursday to a live audience and you wouldn't be briefed. And I think they did that deliberately. And they'd flick the switch on and it'd be like you're on a live show with no media training, no experience, and I didn't really have any real mentors at that time too. So I was fumbling my way through it, absolutely.
Tell me, obviously, with your background as well, at the moment, there's a lot change in the world because of COVID. Now, we talked about some of the impacts with the AFLW draft, but you're in a situation where you're outside sort of the metropolitan area where you live at the moment. What are some of the things that you've got a chance to do during the COVID period? I mean, we've been doing this series since the end of April. and in a lot of ways, it's about sports people and what people are doing during COVID-19. What are some of the things that you've had a little bit more chance to do? I mean, is it gardening, obviously spending a bit more time with family? Have you picked up a new skill? Like I know myself, I've been, started a new casserole dish that I've been cooking and those sorts of things. What are some of the things that Debbie Lee's done? Because you would have had a bit more home time and you haven't had to go to the Western Bulldogs kennel as much, 5 days a week, or how many days you were going before pre-COVID?
Yeah, well, I guess at the start, it's about adjustment. I'm a person who's pretty structured, so you had to adjust that. So I reckon that took me a bit of time. I think I got through it, and now I'm on the end of what an opportunity. Probably not going to be an opportunity like this unless I'm retired, which hopefully I can do, pretty soon, but wish I could do pretty soon. But certainly more time with the kids. Yep, absolutely. And I'm in Gisborne, and we're on a half an acre, so there's plenty to do around the house. And I guess what it's done, it's sort of realigned you and give you some time to think around, what's important. I've been watching some pretty poor shows as well, Housewives and what's the other one on Netflix?
Block.
Yellowstone. I've been getting into that, which I rarely have an opportunity. Yeah, The Block's on now. The Bachelorette, that was good. There's some trashy shows I've been catching up on, which I don't often do, but time with the family and around the house. And then I'm probably in a stage now where, I want to pick up and do a bit more reading, which I probably have never really done. So I've been sent a few books, so I might pick them up in the next couple of weeks.
Deb, one last one for me. Are the kids showing any ability at all, hand-eye?
Well, Stoney, as you know, I wasn't the greatest kick. My partner, Lauren, she can't kick either, while she played 10 years of footy as well. So poor old Mac, yeah, it's funny because it's quite opposite, because Mac comes with me everywhere, and he did when he was 1 year old and I was coaching at the Spurs, So he has this whole different conception of footy. He's amazed that men play football. He's like, the guys play footy, because he's had the reverse role. It's just so interesting. So he goes to kinder and he reels off all the girls' names and everyone, all the boys are like, oh, what are you talking about, buddy? And he's like, oh, no, Ellie Blackburn, Daisy Pearce. So it's quite a nice little ballads for him. But I don't know what it'll be like when he gets older. Look, I am putting a bit of time into him, but I'm not sure how he'll come out.
Very good.
Hey, Deb, just final one from me before we wrap up. What's been the biggest achievement? Is it the Life Member Award? And have you had another job outside of AFL or footy? What's been your biggest achievement in your career as a player, coach, and also an administrator? Was it the Life Member Award? And have you had a job outside of football in your life?
Yeah, I've had a job outside footy. When I was volunteering as president, obviously that was a volunteer role. So I worked in finance. I worked at RACV, a place called Uicom. I was a credit controller. So, at times I was actually repossessing cars. But I knew that was never my pathway. And yeah, it was an interesting job. Sometimes scary job. But apart from, if you look at sport and Bulldogs and Melbourne, I mean, the Life membership is a nice recognition, but the biggest achievement probably would be starting the exhibition series, I reckon, because that was really the start of the conversation to get the AFL to where it is today. And I would say going way back would be starting the Spurs, starting a club in an era, 1993, when no one cared for football, no one understood why women wanted to play footy, and I was 19 years old, and the club's still going now. So I think that's probably something I'm proud of.
Well, Deb, you've had a remarkable influence on women's football in general, and I'm sure a lot of your peers, people that follow you, and also your close friends and family know that you've given a lot to the game, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Stoned Heen View. As I said, we're all about trying to get understanding of the people that are doing it tough in sport at the moment, and their roles have been affected, and obviously there have been some impacts to you and the other people that are involved in sport. So thank you for joining us on the Stoned Heen View podcast. We're on episode 22, so I really appreciate your time, and thanks for holding up that internet connection. Thanks
for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on.
Not a problem. Mark Stone, Debbie Lee, she's got a lot of knowledge on the game and a lot of IP, I should say, intellectual property. And for anyone out there that's going to get drafted at women's footy and get speaking to Debbie, she does a lot for the game, and probably be good, helpful, might be a good little research assignment to understand the influence that she's had on AFLW and also part of the men's game as well.
Some of the younger players playing the women's game today will look at some YouTube highlights of Deb playing back in the day and asked about what it was like playing back in the 2000s. And she's been a great person for women's sport and women's football. And she is a pioneer, there's no doubt about that. And all the achievements that she's got over the years, she's been really hardworking person in the game, and she's a great chat.
Absolutely, and you can get in touch with the Stoned Heen View at any time. You can look us out on Facebook. You can type in the Stoned Heen View. We're also on Instagram as well. Our podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our launching platform, which is Podbean. Stoney, you're up to episode 22. There's a lot to go into this week, but also the YouTube channel will be going gangbusters later this week when we put Debbie Lee up on that channel. So we're looking forward to that video being uploaded.
Yeah, thanks, Marco. See you next week on the Stoned Heen View.
Absolutely. So we'll be back next week. We've got some sponsors in the course of the Stoned Heen View. McCartney's Real Estate and East Fruit Market are coming on board for September. So we look forward to going out to those businesses and being involved with them. We look forward to your company next time on the Stoned Heen View for episode 23. Bye for now.